my guiding light has just brought me to a much better experience about my body, about life, about food, about everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just say, I feel strongly that you have that too. And you're going to have your own unique experience. And I do feel that your intuition, the voice of your soul, whatever you want to call it, does want to lead you to a more satisfying, gratifying, enjoyable experience of life. So I would just offer, like, are you willing to allow that for yourself? Because that's where I feel like our intuition wants to lead us, is to a better, more enjoyable, more satiating experience of life. So I've learned how to allow that a lot more for myself, and it's really, really nice. It keeps getting nicer.
Welcome to the Delicious Alignment Podcast, high vibing conversations with me, your host, Rhonda Ryder. This show covers all topics related to living an amazing, fun filled life through becoming a master of your emotions and your vibrational frequency. I'm thrilled to introduce today's guest, Timothy Waterman. I wanted to have Timothy, aka Beau, as a guest because I was fascinated with his journey of learning how to love his body and celebrate his food, a topic I am very passionate about. In fact, my entire first season of my podcast centers around this topic. I recommend watching some or all of those episodes if you want to dig deeper into self and body love. I found it so interesting when Beau told me that he picked up his first nutrition book at the age of 11. He shares with us how he became very controlling with his food in his teens, counting calories and following extremely restrictive diets. Today, Beau has a more relaxed and enjoyable and loving relationship with food and with his body. And with exercise, he's learned to follow his inner guidance when it comes to eating and, well, everything else in his life. As a transformational guide who passionately speaks on the process of creating a loving and harmonious relationship with oneself, I knew he was a perfect guest for this show. His main message is that we all can remember how to feel good more often by going within and live an incredibly rewarding life starting right now. We don't have to wait. So without further ado, let's jump in. Hello, Timothy.
Hello, so nice to be with you here today.
Yeah, thank you. It is so nice to be with you. We are going to talk about your journey with learning how to love your body and celebrate food. And so I'm really excited to talk to you about that because that's one of my areas that I'm very passionate about. I know you're a channel and you're a coach, but you also have this similar experience. If I can say that, I don't even know because I don't really know the details of your experience. I've had challenges with loving my body for a very long time and so excited that that keeps on getting better and better and better. The self-love keeps on getting better and better and better. And so I would love to hear about your story, how this played out for you. Maybe you could start out with what life was like before and what life is like now. Of course, we don't want to dwell too much in the quote unquote challenges, but I think it's important for people to know where we've been and where we are now and how we've overcome a lot of this stuff through practicing everything that we've been learning. Like this stuff really works.
It does, yeah, it does. And yeah, I can agree. It does keep getting better. The more I understand my own energetics and like universal energetics, it does keep getting better. I totally
Yeah.
agree with that. And so yeah, in terms of food and body, I I took a big interest in gymnastics when I was pretty young. I remember I actually was homeschooled, but I lived next door to neighbors, and there was like neighbor kids. And one day, one of my neighbor friends came home and like we learned cartwheels today in class. And I was probably only like 7, but I was like, whoa. And so I wanted to do gymnastics, and my parents enrolled me. And so in gymnastics, like food and body are pretty important. And it's because your body becomes this fine-tuned machine that's like flying through the air and twisting and flipping and turning. So it's pretty relevant to to that particular sport or, craft. And so I really just wanted to be at my best. And so even as young as age 11, I picked up a nutrition book and
Wait,
wanted to
did you, I'm
understand.
sorry to interrupt. Did you do gymnastics?
Yeah. So yeah, my parents probably enrolled me like somewhere like 7 or 8, and I did it all the way up until probably about I was like 20 or so. So yeah,
Oh,
definitely did a lot of
really?
gymnastics. Yeah.
Did you? No, because my daughter was competing and I was a gymnastics mom. I mean, we
Oh,
traveled
okay.
all over Florida. It,
Okay. Yeah. No, I mean it is a lot of fun, and certainly helps one discover, like potentials, like how much potential we actually have. So yeah, it's an amazing sport for so many reasons. But yeah, that's where my relationship really, that's where I took an interest in my body and nutrition. I I did start to become pretty controlling about it in my mid-teenage years because of just um, I had a an infant brother who passed away in a car accident when I was like 13, and that was pretty, it was a lot for that age and a lot of emotions. And so at that point in my life, I didn't feel like I had any control in life, and I wanted to feel in control. And so food became a way for me to feel like I was in control. Like if I could control calories and, fat grams, because back then, this is, probably like almost 30 years ago, like back then it was all about, fat grams, and sugar was the enemy back then, and calories. And so I was like, well, I can control this stuff. And so I became pretty controlling about it. And actually, had the experience of anorexia for a number of years. And that was just like my coping mechanism to try to be in control. That probably lasted till I was about 17. And
so
then
for like what age did you start having anorexic tendencies?
I would say probably around 14.
Yeah,
Yeah.
till 17.
Yeah. Yeah. When I was 17, I just lost interest. It just wasn't, whatever sense of control it gave me, I just became very tired of that. And then all of a sudden I had an interest in muscles. And I was like looking at people with muscles on magazines that, I want that, and I'm not going to be able to get there by trying to keep my calories under 1,000 calories each day. And so I just dropped it. I had to decide for me that I was done, and I just dropped it. And then I went full blown into like bodybuilding. So that's a bit about the beginning of my journey.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's really interesting that, you had that little bout with anorexia. So you discovered muscles. You want and you want some.
Yeah.
And you're like, I need actually some protein in my body to develop make these muscles bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then what happened?
Yeah. Well, I definitely went full blown into bodybuilding and definitely built a lot of muscle. I would say by the time I was 25, 26, I was bench pressing like 385 pounds, and I'm 5'8", and at that time I weighed about 180 pounds. So it was like bench pressing like 385 pounds. Like I remember there was like a trainer I really knew well at the gym, and he was training someone. He's like, look over there. He's like, that guy's about to bench 385. And the person he was training was like, no way. He's like, watch, he's gonna do it. And so I did. And so I took it as far as I could take it. I'm pretty much an all-in type person. And then I actually started getting hurt. Like I was lifting so heavy that I started to get like injuries. And though I couldn't see it back then, it was like, life or the universe's way of like, you're pushing yourself too hard, you're overexerting yourself. And so I began to slow down at that point. And I would say at the age of 27, I saw, because at that time it was just all about calories, fat grams, and protein. That was really all that mattered. When I was 27, I want to say about 27, I saw the documentary Food Inc. And I actually had a lot of health challenges, if you will, at the time. I had pretty severe acne all of my teenage years, probably as early as like 11 or 12. And it followed me into my 20s. So even at like 25, 26, I still had a lot of acne. And I also had it on my shoulders and my back. It was very uncomfortable. And I honestly couldn't stand the way I looked. And so I didn't want to be in pictures. I had a hard time looking in the mirror. And when I discovered Food Inc. and I saw that there's like a behind the scenes to food and what actually is in, I never really gave too much thought before then. It was just like, oh, it's food. Like, what's the big deal? I didn't really know much about organic or, anything. And then when I saw this documentary, it was like just telling me all the things that had been in a lot of food up until that point and like the benefit of organic and stuff like that and more natural routes and how it was leading. I'm pretty sure Food Inc. covered that it was just like it can lead to a lot of issues in the human body. I imagine they must have covered that. It's been a long time. I saw that like 13 years ago. But I kid you not, based on seeing that documentary, I was like, well, I want to eat clean now. I want to eat the best ingredients that I can. And I also decided to go off of dairy because I just learned a lot of things about the non-organic dairy at that point. And I kid you not, when I cut out dairy from my diet, this is just my experience. I'm not telling anyone else what they should do. But for me, just something told me like, cut out the dairy. And I kid you not, within a few weeks, my acne went away completely. And by that point, I had been dealing with it for like 15, 16 years. And I had like no self-esteem because I hated the way my face looked and, back and all of that. And it just was like in 3 weeks, it was gone. And I had tried everything, like the expensive acne, the really high priced acne treatments, like everything I could think of, nothing worked. And then all of a sudden it just disappeared by making these, like
Your
using
skin
better
looks
ingredients.
beautiful. So,
Well,
so, so dairy, that's interesting. What I teach in my book, listen to your body,
yeah.
what your body will tell you, what it wants, what it doesn't like.
Mhm. I agree. Like our guidance is specific to the moment, to the chapter of life that we're in and the moment that we're in, like our bodies. To me, I truly believe my body is always speaking to me, because this is like 13 years later now. So yeah, I always ask my body throughout the day, like, what feels good, and I really tune in and listen. But back then I was just going off of all of this new information that I had learned and just, yeah, something did tell me, So that's when the whole thing began to be holistic for me. Like I saw the benefit of taking care of my body, giving it good nutrition. And that also began to change the way that I exercised. So that's when I really was like, oh, there's a holistic picture and I can really, I can just show up better for me. I can take better care of me. That's when like that whole way of being showed up in my life specifically. But just to fast forward probably like, let's say 9 years or so, that's when I really started talking to my body. Like, what do you want? What feels good for you? And really making my intuition the most important thing rather than like what this diet says, what that diet says. I made the effort to have a really clear inner dialogue. And that's how I've been living my life is there's no system, there's no
Mhm.
rules. It's just me listening to a deeper part of me, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Did you have issues with thinking you are unattractive or your weight or I need to lose weight, that kind of thing?
Well, the anorexia definitely was a part again, because back then, even this is like the 90s when I was 9, 10, then went into my teenage years. So back then, it was like when all of these workout fads were becoming a big deal, like these workout VHS tapes that then went to DVDs. And so like body image was everything. And that's when I became aware of these magazines that just had all these really fit muscular people. And there was a lot of just talk about weight in general. So like I remember like in the 90s, probably when I was like 11 or 12, like I had said something like, I never want to be over 100 pounds. And that was just again in response to this heavy societally based thing about weight and what's referred to as body fat and stuff like that. And so even as a kid, I was very heavily influenced and just had a lot of resistance and fear. that definitely played into the anorexia because again, I was like trying to control my weight based off of all of this societal feedback I was getting. And so that definitely was a part of my life back then. I would say in more recent years, what's been interesting, because I was always very fit from 17 onward. And then in the past few years, I haven't had the same drive to exercise in an intense way like I used to. Like everything's just been like feeling a lot more like I want it to be more relaxed. I want it to be more easy. I don't want to be
Mm-hmm.
pushing myself. And
Mm-hmm.
so I have had, some what's referred to as like body fat show up around the midsection. And it's, been really interesting to like see now with all of my conscious awareness, just, to see the response to, what's referred to as body fat. So having some of it show up, I'm just like, I see some of the resistance that obviously still comes from, I feel like, the societal preaching, because it's always looked at as this bad thing. But then I have this conscious aware part of me that it's like, oh, like this is my body and this is just an experience I'm having. So like what happens if I don't resist this the way that my human conditioning wants to resist it, if that makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
That's been more of like a recent experience where I've just been on one hand seeing that conditioning, but on the other hand, how can I be with this in a loving way, if that makes sense?
Yeah, yeah, it totally makes sense. And I know you've been listening to the Communion of Light, something he said recently. The more that you fight against it, whatever it is, the more it's going to stick around. So you just being chill about it and not fighting it, like accepting it. He keeps saying this thing, like if you're okay with it being there forever, then that's when you've really let go.
Mm.
And that's when it can go actually go away because you're not fighting against it. And that's what keeps it there. What you're saying is you're accepted. You're not freaking out. Like we don't want it to be hard.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, too, is that it feels to me like because again, our consciousness, it's there as much, in my experience, it's there as much as we allow it to be. I'm aware enough that I see resistance showing up. So again, initially I see the resistance. Oh, body fat, I'm using quotation marks, body fat as a bad thing. That's what I always heard from a lot of like societal voices. So I see that those conditioned voices arise as I'm witnessing an experience in my body, but I'm aware enough to be like, but is that what I want to be true? Do I need to make this bad? Like you said, do I need to resist this? Or can I just, to me, the opportunity, because I feel so many of us are on this journey of true, radical, unconditional self love. To me, the opportunity is, well, I see these conditioned voices, but can I choose to lean into love? Can I let that be my choice, my response? So it is an opportunity. And, I'm seeing this moment how that's the way it's being of service. It's like if this experience shows up that you were always told shouldn't be or was bad, can you consciously choose to leave? Well, my response is gonna be love, or curiosity, or how is this helping me? As the communion light always says, like everything, everywhere, everyone, everything, everywhere is always here to help us. That to me has been the opportunity. I see the conditioned voices, and can I consciously choose to respond with love, curiosity,
Mm,
acceptance? That's been the growth curve, if you ask me.
that is so good. I really love that because it's not like, oh, I have some resistance. Now what? Oh, that's bad. Even like judging the resistance as
Yeah.
good or bad. But you're saying, can I respond to this? Even seeing that I have some resistance, can I respond to this with love?
Yeah.
That is really powerful. And it's so simple. You,
It's simple in theory, but to me, it's
mm.
like that. It's
Yeah,
that real
in
life
theory,
lived
it's simple.
experience where it's like, what am I going to do in this moment? You know, am I going to let the conditioned voices win, or am I going to lean into love? And, even if the conditioned voices do start to win, which is the judgment and the resistance, it's like, it's by feeling my way through that experience, like feeling what the judgment feels like, that I just recognize, no, I don't want to let the judgment be what is driving here, what's taking over here. So even if I lean in a little bit, I see how that feels, and I'm like, oh, that doesn't feel good to me. It doesn't feel nice. And so even by having letting some of the judgment arise, and I feel what the judgment feels like, then I'm like, no, the judgment isn't working for me. So what's my other option? And to me, it's the love. So that's very simple in theory, but it's those real life moments when you just decide for yourself, you're like, okay, that doesn't feel good. So what's my other option? And to me, the love and acceptance, that one just is like, oh, that feels better.
Yeah. And have you ever been in that situation where, oh, I just can't love myself? When I was in my binging days where I was doing a lot of food binging, there's just so much, I'm just going to say it, like self-hatred, when you're doing that. And to go to, okay, well, I'm just going to love myself. Like now I can do it. Now, thank God, or thank Source, or thank me, thank somebody that I don't binge eat anymore. But that little voice may come back occasionally judging something I ate, and I can soothe it now. I know what to do. I know how to soothe the voice and all of that. And I know how to get back to love, self-love. And sometimes it's easier than others.
Yeah. Well, it means, it's like, to me, that's again, that's the real life experience, the real life data. Like each and every time if you ask me, you're learning something, what does it look like when I let the judgment win? How does that feel? How does it turn out when I am really able to choose love? It's like each experience has something to offer, and that's just helps us get more and more clear. And if we let the judgment win in any given moment, I'm not going to say that's bad. It's just an experience, and only we can know if we want to perpetuate that experience or not. It's like sometimes you just get to a point where you're so tired of relating to yourself in a certain way that you just can't anymore. You just can't. You're like, I just, I'm so tired of making this choice that doesn't feel good to me that
Mm-hmm.
I just somehow I'm going to make a better feeling choice. Just somehow I'm going to do it because I'm so tired of that. And if it goes that far, well, again, it's just experience. It's something we're learning from. And again, it's up to each one of us how far we let it go. And I just, again, from my own experience and just the way I've heard other people talk about it, it's like, even in hindsight, that was of service. Like I let it get that far, but then I was just done. Then I was just done. And
Yeah.
I started to choose better. And so even in hindsight, I'm like, I can see how even letting it get that far can be of
Yeah.
service.
And be of service. Like everything is happening for you. I want to take just a quick minute to make sure you know about a few resources I have for you. The first is my Love Your Body course. It's an online course, free for a limited time, $97 value, and includes over 20 short videos based on my book. You can gain access to this course by going to deliciousalignment.com/free course. Next is my book, Delicious Alignment, How 25 Women Learn to Love and Transform Their Bodies Using Abraham Hicks and the Law of Attraction. You can find this book on Amazon by searching my name or by clicking on the link below. If you're interested in private coaching, my specialty is helping you discover how to love your body and make peace with food. Go to deliciousalignment.com/coaching to book a session or coaching package. And last but not least, make sure to join my Facebook group, Delicious Alignment. All links are in the show notes below. Now, back to the interview. Have you ever had that voice in your head that judges what you eat?
Well, I'll give a bit of a description of what it was like, again, from that age of 27, probably all the way up until, man, probably a couple of years ago. And because, there are a lot of nutritional perspectives out there now. There's a lot of like diets and whatnot. And so there's all these rules and shouldn't eat this and shouldn't eat that, and this does this and this. And I got very caught up in that. And I forget the term. I still don't know the term. I know there is some term that's used for this, but I would say probably around the age of 36 or something, I had so many nutritional rules at that point that it was like hard to decide what to eat because it was just like, no, I can't do that because of that thing, and I can't do that. And so then it's like you're spending like 45 minutes trying to figure out like what you're going to make for dinner because of all these nutritional rules. So there's some kind of term for that, but that was an experience. Like I was making, I was just believing that there was all these problems and I couldn't have so many things. And that took up a lot of energy. And then what began to shift as I was exposed to the perspective or the way of being that it's all about our consciousness. And again, as you've been referencing, what our beliefs are and how we choose to approach food with our energy. So it's not so much about what science has revealed necessarily, or what certain people are saying about this food or that food. It's more about like, I am a conscious creator of my experience, like I'm like the 0 point for my reality. What am I going to choose to believe as I engage with food? What am I going to say about each experience with food? And I opened up to that because to me it felt good to at first entertain that approach and then also incorporate that approach, which is, it's all about my consciousness. And so then I started to relax and I started to just be like, I'm just going to bless whatever I choose to eat. I'm going to choose to be a lot more easy about this relationship with food. And I've come so far that, if you would have asked me like 8 years ago, I would have said, if it's not organic, I'm not eating it. Now I've gotten to the point where if something is offered to me, like if someone bakes like this chocolate chip zucchini bread, and I don't know exactly what's in it, I don't know if the ingredients are organic or not, in that moment, I'll just be like, is my body pulled to this? Does it want it? And if the answer is yes, I simply say, okay, I'm going to choose to have this experience, whether it's just a slice or whatever of the bread. And I'm just going to, as I hold it in my hand, I'm going to set the intention that this is blessed. I'm blessing it with my consciousness, and this is going to be beneficial to my body. So I take those moments of intention and I tell myself, my conscious creator self, what this experience is for me. And then I just eat it and I enjoy it. And then I just don't give it another thought. I'm like, wow, that, I taste it I slow down and I really like to taste things in my mouth, like actually bring my awareness into like my taste buds and absorb the taste in a very satisfying way as much as possible. And then when it's done, I'm just like, that was great. I move on with my day and I don't give it another thought.
I love it. I love it. That's what we call food freedom, my friend.
It definitely feels like freedom, that's for sure.
I also call that celebrating your food. I just love that aspect of this journey, the journey that I've been on and that I help people with. And I know you understand this so well. I didn't celebrate food. I was ashamed of food. I was ashamed of my body, ashamed of everything I ate, basically, because how could I celebrate this food? I even talk about this in the book, because if I'm publicly celebrating this food, I was afraid people were going to judge me because I was fat or overweight. They were going to say, well, of course she loves food. So I wouldn't openly say, oh, this is so good. I never allowed myself to celebrate it like what you're talking about. And now I help people learn how to do that, because so many people I find are not celebrating food because we're ashamed.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the way it's landing for me, what you're saying is that you're just at a place where you're unapologetic about it. We have the most influence over our own experience. What other people do is up to them. And so I can say, as I've had this experience where I've like let go of a lot of these self-imposed rules that I used to have and all these like tight restrictions, and I'm enjoying it much more because, what's changed is my consciousness, how I approach it, my relationship with it. there's still people around me I see that have a lot of rules, like what about what they can have, what
Oh,
they can't
yeah.
have. And, like,
Absolutely.
to me, it's like, it's, these rules they picked up from certain diet fads or whatever. And what I've realized is that I don't need to impose on their experience, if you will. I don't need to try to get them to see it my way. Like, the best thing I can do is just enjoy it fully for myself because, like, people are observing us, how closely depends on the relationship. But, for people that are watching me that know me well, they know what I used to be like 8 years ago, and now I show up differently. So if they're watching me and if they have a genuine question like, "Wait, he never used to do that, and now he's doing that." If they really wanna know, they'll ask. They'll be like, "So, what's going on? Because you never used to eat those kind of things." And, now because they're interested and they're asking, I can be like, like, "Well, this is what's changed for me." But if someone else wants to have their rules and wants to have their restrictions and they're not open to any other perspectives, like, I'm just much more of like a hands off. Like, if that's what they want to do and that's just where they're at and that's what they know and that's all
Mhm.
they're interested in, great, because it's their experience. It's the experience they're choosing to have for them. If they are watching my experience and they see something has changed, and again, they genuinely want to know and ask me,
Yeah.
like, I'll share. But for me, it's just, and what I liked about what you were sharing is that, like, I get the sense that you're just unapologetic now. Like, you're not so
Mhm.
concerned about what are other people going to think based on my relationship with food. Like, I'm just having a good time. And honestly, I'm letting people see me have a good time. Whatever they're going to make of it is up to them. But for me, I'm having a really good time with food and I'm not going to apologize for it. It's great. So, like, I would just
Yeah.
say, I think it's amazing that you're in a place of celebrating and enjoying
Yeah.
and just like letting people see how much you're enjoying it. Like, that's pretty amazing if you ask me.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. I really am enjoying it. When you're binge eating, you stop tasting the food. You're not even really conscious of what you're doing. You're mindlessly eating. So I wouldn't say that I was really enjoying the food and
Yeah.
tasting it every bite like I do now. It's a totally different experience. And what other people are doing with dieting and all of that, I don't go near that unless they ask questions.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's what typically comes through in these teachings of higher consciousness, because we both reference like the communion of light, and obviously I've heard them elsewhere, including through my own individual channels. That, yeah, like, that is, from a higher perspective, that's the best place to start, is with an energy of love and acceptance, because like, your body is in service to you in this life. Like, your body's truly in service. And it's also just a testament to how powerful our thoughts and our perspective is. Like, again, what we're paying attention to and even what we're in resistance to, we tend to get more of. And so it's like, yeah, it's finding that place of, as you said earlier, like, letting go, allowing being and being allowing being and being accepting. If we want to have a slightly different experience, like, I mean, because there's people that, for instance, I recently saw this. I'll tie it back into my experience in a moment, but this just popped up right now. There was an experience, well, I saw this video about this guy who, like, he was at a point where, like, the amount of weight that he had in his body was causing some troubles in his life. And he just got to that point where, like, I need to change. And so he really wanted to change. And so he decided to go adopt a dog. And he actually asked for a dog that, by the veterinarian's discretion, like, what they would call extra weight, because he wanted to go on this journey of taking better care of his body and he wanted to do it alongside the dog. And so, like, he hired a nutritionist, whatever one felt good to him. And he started going on all these really long walks with his dog. And I think the story goes like something like, in a year, he lost 120 pounds or something like that, just because he really wanted a different experience. So he created it. If we really are interested in a different experience, I do believe that we can create a different experience. But again, to me, coming from the higher vibrational perspective, the most powerful place to start is with love and acceptance for
Mm-hmm.
where our body is now. And then if we have a vision and it feels good, if it feels easy, light, if it feels better, then obviously we can go in that direction. Because I believe that we can create different experiences and be ready for what you ask for, is what I like to say. I've been saying to myself, I'm interested in having big muscle again, because I kind of like leaned off of the heavy weightlifting for a long time. And I am interested in big muscle. That is something I have an interest in, but also I don't want to be in the aggressive, like pushing myself too hard exercise. So with all of this talk about consciousness, I'm like, well, what can I create if I'm in the energy of it, letting it be easy and fall into place? And as I've been interested in big muscle, that's where like more body fat has been showing up. And so it was interesting because, when bodybuilding, a lot of times you do add weight, which then converts into muscle.
Right.
So like a lot of like pro bodybuilders, they'll actually intentionally put on a lot of weight, but then they turn it into muscle through exercise. And so as I was saying, I'm interested in bigger muscles again, like more body fat was coming. And so again, in the beginning, I saw the conditioned consciousness that was like, oh, body fat, like this isn't supposed to be a good thing. But then there was the conscious part of me that was like, well, this is happening. How can I be in acceptance and, just loving towards this? So it was that growth curve. But it's like, I kind of forgot that a lot of times when you're interested in bigger muscle, it's like more body fat can actually be a stepping stone to that experience, to more muscle. And so it's like just remembering, like, when you really ask for something, it may not go the way you think it's going to go. But are you resisting the process, or are you staying, to me, it's like, am I staying curious? Because when more body fat started to show up, again, like initially it was like, wait, why is this happening? But then there was two things. One, well, I don't want to reject a part of me, so how can I be loving towards this? And two, like, oh yeah, I asked for more muscle, and typically more body fat as a stepping stone to that. So it's also just remembering that if we ask for something, it may not necessarily go the way that we expect it to, but it's that willing to stay curious, being like, oh, like this is actually helping me. So it's like, that's how I've been retraining myself to look at what we call body fat. To me personally, like ultimately it's like about the feeling in the body. Like, how do I feel in my body? Like, does my body feel natural? Does it feel at ease? Is there something in my body that's asking for attention because it does want to be worked out in some way, whatever that looks like? But yeah, ultimately it's the feeling. Like, how do I, and that's why I don't want to do the aggressive, like I'm interested in the muscle, but again, from this place of consciousness for me in my life, I don't want to do it the way I did it all those years ago, because
Right.
when I was doing the aggressive exercise, my body literally hurt all the time. Like, I was always stiff, always sore, always tight. Like my body felt like really uncomfortable in a lot of ways. And so like, I don't want that. And so this is again where the curious is so key for me, because again, it's like, I'm interested as a conscious being, who has this, this body I'm experiencing. I'm interested in the muscle again, but I don't want to approach it the way I've ever approached it before. And that's where
Mm-hmm.
it's like just the staying open and letting the intuition lead, because it's like, oh yeah, I can totally see how, again, what we refer to as body fat is a part of this process and it's helping me.
Right.
And also a whole new approach to exercise, because I don't want a stiff, tight, tense, sore body again. Like, because when I stopped doing all that aggressive exercise, my body started to feel relaxed, easy, light. It's like sometimes when I'm up in thought, I can like forget that I even have a body because my body's so like relaxed and it doesn't hurt anymore. When your body's hurting, you're always aware of your body. So like
True, true.
when your body's really light and easy, you can be thinking you're like, oh, I forgot I had a body.
Oh, well, now that's pretty cool. I don't know if I experienced that too much. I like that. Very
And maybe
nice.
because I've always been kind of like what they say, air dominant. Like I'm very much an air type person. Like I'm in like the thought world a lot. But also I let my body, feel better by giving up all of that really, stressful exercise. So now it's like this whole new thing where like I know what I'm interested in, but this time I don't feel like I have to control it and be aggressive about it. It's like I'm letting my body, my reality, the thoughts of my universe, I'm letting the thoughts of my universe, my outer reality, and my body guide me into more of what I'm desiring, and letting it be easy, letting it happen in natural timing, and just not trying to force, push, control, and honestly damage my body in the process. I'm like, oh, well, it's just the curious, like, what would it look like to have more muscle and feel good in my body and not try to control the thing with, stress and force and effort? Like, what would that be like? And it's like I'm starting to have that experience. And along the way, I am seeing these judgments that to me come from like the societal conditioning. But as I see the judgments, I keep getting opportunities to see things in a new light. And so to me, it's the whole thing is actually just helping me love my body in a new way. So like that's
Mhm.
like, if anything, if you ask me, like that's the real reward. Like
Yeah.
what I'm interested in and being open to a new way to go about is actually helping me love my body in a whole new way. So there,
Yes. Yes. Yay to that.
I'm not trying to get to some result so then I can love myself. Like my self-love experience is very much about loving myself now in this moment. If there's something I want to create, I know I can go on that journey of creation, but it's very much like, no, I love my body now. I love, my experience of my body now. And what I've found that really works well for me is just paying attention to how I feel during certain exercise. Because obviously there's a lot of different ways to exercise, and some may feel better to you or to me or to anyone else, just again, based on what feels good to that particular body. But what I've noticed is that it used to be, again, like I need to work out so I look a certain way, so I have a six pack, blah, 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 all that stuff. Now, like that kind of motivation doesn't work for me anymore. Even if I try it for a little bit, again, it only gets me like so far, like a couple workouts. I'm like, that's not working like it used to. But what really does work and feel good to me is just noticing like, oh, when I exercise a certain way, I feel really good in my body. Like, the blood is pumping.
Mm.
It's like stuff is moving. I feel like more energetic flow. I feel grounded in my body. And I just started to notice like, wow, like I wanted to like move my body. And so I'm doing, whether it's, I like to use exercise bands, and sometimes I still use like physical weights. Uh, but just noticing like, oh, I feel really good as I'm exercising. And I started to make it about the feel good rather
Mhm.
than all the details. So like, and I honestly listen to my body too, because all those years ago, sometimes I would work out for like 2.5 hours and, doing like heavy exercises. Now I'm clear. I'm like, you know what? I want to exercise. And I remind myself, like, I feel really good when I do that type of
Mhm.
exercise. So it's like, I'm like, oh, I'm going to do this because it will feel good. And honestly, sometimes I do it and it's feeling really good, but after like 30 minutes, I'm just very attuned to my body. Sometimes it'll just be like 30 minutes and my body will be like, that's enough. Like you're done.
Mhm.
And I'm like, okay, I could keep pushing myself or I could listen to my body. And what I found for me, it's so much better when I just listen to myself and I go, okay, I'm done. My body says that's enough. There are times where, it still goes longer, like over an hour, but I just make the way I measure it is how I feel. Like I'm like, oh, I'm still feeling good 45 minutes into this exercise. And then maybe at like an hour and 15, my body will be like, you're done. But I've had it as short as like 20 minutes. Sometimes
Yeah.
I just like, I'm gonna go do this, and I never like set a time, but after 20 minutes, my body will be like, that's all you needed.
Mhm.
I'm like, oh, okay. And so I just walk away. And that's personally what does work for me is like, oh, I'm gonna feel good while I'm exercising. Whereas
Yes.
it used to be again, like, I need a six pack.
Right. Right. I could so relate to what you're saying. And the other thing I want to add is that there's so much scientific research that shows that exercising helps with the release of serotonin and dopamine, and that it's really like it's my Prozac as well. Like I always say now, like doing calibrations for people, Coaching sessions, doing calibrations is my Prozac, and exercise is my Prozac. Really, like I have people in my life. My dad, he's been on Prozac for a long time, and I say, "This is my Prozac." Like I don't want to go on Prozac, and nothing's wrong with it. No judgment. It's just that I personally don't want to, right?
Yeah.
So the exercising now, it's about feeling good. And like you feel the blood circulating, number
Yep.
one. But number two, you just feel, for me, I feel happier. I'm
Mm.
releasing hormones that feel good. And plus the
Yeah.
psychological act of exercising, just knowing, oh, I'm doing this and just being happy about that.
Yeah.
But scientifically, it's going to help you feel better with the hormones that you're going to release. So it's like there's this whole movement now. This actress Jamai, she's on Instagram. She's a big proponent of exercise for mental health.
Mm. Gotcha.
When you do it just for the fun of it, like you're saying. Like I
Yeah.
want to start pickleball and even improv. I started improv classes, and that's very physical.
Yeah, I was actually just thinking about that as you were talking, because I know you're doing improv. We've talked about it. I bet you're moving a lot during improv.
I'm not getting down on the floor like these kids are. This is a little physical, and this is
Mm.
fun.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Make
Yeah,
it
it's like,
fun.
it's the highest choice, what feels best in the moment, what has the most excitement in it, what feels the best. And so again, I mean, for me, if I'm considering a few exercise options, I literally am like, what feels, and sometimes it's just a long walk. Like literally, I'll be like, well,
Hmm.
is it the exercise bands? Is it weight or is it a walk? And I have to say, like, there's a lot of times where it's like, I just want to go walk for a few miles. Like that literally has the most energy in it. And I just like, because I'm aware of the feel better, I'm like, okay, that's what it is. I'm gonna like go walk. I mean, when I walk, I like to walk. So it can be like 5 miles, but I'm like, that is the most energy. So I'm just gonna go walk until I'm done walking.
Yes. So, what would you like to tell people about loving their body, self love, food?
First, what I want to say is just everything I've shared in this conversation is my journey, what's worked for me. I like to really be clear about that because what I have found is that, I have my own inner voice, whether you want to call that intuition, voice of my heart, voice of my soul. Like I'm very clear I have that inner voice. And what's worked for me really has been learning to listen to that, learning to lean in and let that be my guide. And it's a guide for everything, like even new information. So when I first learned about approaching food with that higher perspective of consciousness and like just choosing to be in a loving relationship with whatever it was, whatever I feel led to, like at one point that was new information, like I hadn't really considered it like that before. And so I just leaned in and I listened to my own heart and soul. And that perspective of approaching food with that level of consciousness really did resonate. It really did land for me. And so I just trusted that it felt good. I trusted that it felt aligned. And so I kept leaning into that perspective. And then that really began to shift and create really meaningful and, pleasurable experience in my life because I was able to experience the pleasure of food in a way that I hadn't really allowed for many years before that. So it's all been my experience, what's worked for me. I would just say that, like, if you're listening or watching, like, you best. I firmly believe that you have your own inner voice that is, again, whether you want to call it intuition or higher self, voice of your heart and soul, whatever feels good to you. Like, I truly feel that you have your own guiding light, and that guiding light always has a perspective on whatever you're entertaining. And for me, it's been by listening to that for one, my life has just gotten easier. There's a lot less to figure it out. I'm using in quotation marks. There's a lot less to figure out. There's a lot less to stress about. It's just gotten easier. It's just gotten more simple. I spend a lot less time thinking about it, and I spend a lot more time enjoying what my own intuition and soul leads me to, and just how I approach all of it, my body, my food.
Mm.
My guiding light has just brought me to a much better experience. about my body, about life, about food, about everything.
Mhm.
And I would
Mhm.
just say, I feel strongly that you have that too. And you're going to have your own unique experience. And I do feel that your intuition, the voice of your soul, whatever you want to call it, does want to lead you to a more satisfying, gratifying, enjoyable experience of life. So I would just offer, like, are you willing to allow that for yourself? Because that's where I feel like our intuition wants to lead us, is to a better, more enjoyable, more satiating experience of life. So I've learned how to allow that a lot more for myself, and it's really, really nice. It keeps getting nicer. So I would just say I feel that that's available for you too. And it's just whatever you make of it. It's not like the whole right or wrong thing. It's just like, to me, the real question, I actually I actually channeled this once. It was like, the measure or like metric of life, if you want it to be, can be like how much you're enjoying it. Are you really
Mhm.
enjoying your life and having a good time?
Yeah.
That's the real question.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's gotten much more enjoyable, and it has been by way of my own inner guiding light. And so if you want it to be more enjoyable, I believe it is available, it's possible, and you have the greatest resource within yourself. The name of the game at this point in my life, because it's what I keep getting from my own, higher self, my own soul, is
Mhm.
trust yourself. Like, can you trust yourself? So that's what I would offer. Self-trust is a huge part of this game. So just, are you willing to trust yourself in your own guiding light? That's what feels really alive for me at this point in my journey.
Yes, beautifully said. Beautifully said. I couldn't agree more. All the answers are within you, and even your relationship with food, your relationship with your body. The more you entertain your spiritual quest, you just keep on evolving, and that love for yourself grows. Yes. Yeah. Really
Absolutely.
nicely said. Tell us more about what you do, because I
Mhm.
know this is just a small aspect of subjects that you deal with, and this is one I wanted to zero in on, and I'm so grateful for that, to have this conversation with you.
Well, thank you again. I appreciate the opportunity. I know, yeah, we decided to have this discussion just based on our common experiences we had at, like, this phone call maybe like a month back or so, where we just talked about, food and body and whatnot. And that's why this conversation felt like a match. It's been a really great conversation that feels very real to me. And that's what I definitely am craving more of, is like real conversations about what our lives are actually like,
Mm,
and the choices we have throughout each given day, and how we're learning to bring that consciousness in. That's what I deeply crave, and I feel like that's what we've co-created here today. So I'm really thankful for that. And then to speak to your question, so the core of my, what I call my contribution to the world, is relationship with self. So like that's what has transformed my life. It has very much been and continues to be about the relationship I'm having with myself, because again, I am consciousness, I am this point of awareness, and I have this human vessel, I have a mind that thinks, I have a mind that was conditioned. And so it's in my relationship with this human body that really impacts the experience that I'm having in this life. And so that's what I call, like, relationship to self, the relationship of my consciousness to my human beingness. And that includes the world of my thoughts, feelings, emotions, actions, behaviors, routines, all of it. And so what I've always focused on is the relationship to self. Like, how is that going? How is that feeling? And where I've gotten to now with it is just it's your own energy. I think of myself as like this energetic guide, and I help people typically come to me when, I'll say, when they're a bit twirled up about something in their lives. Like, they're twirled up about any number of things. It can be a situation in their life, relationships, stuff that has to do with a business or their career. It's like people typically come to me when they're just twirled up, like there's some kind of energetic funk around something in their
mm,
lives. And it can be, again, like really any situation. And I just help people create more clarity within themselves, because again, what feels better already exists within. it's just with a lot of the mental conditioning and like the overthinking that a lot of us were kind of like taught to do, it's like it can begin to feel stressful, complicated, overwhelming. And I come in as an energetic guide to help people kind of relax out of all of like the overwhelm and the overthinking. And I help them just hear their own inner truth, so that what I typically find is people, when they leave a session, they feel very relaxed, at ease. They're like, oh, it's not as big of a deal as I thought it was. Or they're just like, oh, I see how it's actually here to help me, whatever the situation is. So I really like helping people refine their own energy first so that they can feel better. So they find that way to allow themselves to feel better. But then also it impacts how they show up in their lives and their response to life. Because again, like if there's certain situations and we're responding from resistance or judgment, that's where like someone's energy can get kind of like funky and twirled up, if you will. So I just kind of see myself as helping people soothe themselves, helping people relax, and just find their own clarity about things so that they can get back to feeling better and enjoying their lives. So yeah,
Mm.
it's all about relationship with self and your own energy and essentially how you're responding to your life. That's the core of you call it my work, but I like to say that's the core of my contribution to people's lives in the world.
Great.
Yeah.
Tell us about a little about your podcast.
Yeah. So, again, it's all about relationship to self. And the initial batch of episodes I did was a lot of me sharing about my own journey and just the things that I had been learning about that had shifted big things in my life. So just my consciousness, becoming aware of my beliefs. Like I talked a lot about law of attraction in the early episodes. Then I started to interview people. So I have a lot of interviews with, again, just people who are conscious practitioners or who have been on a journey of awakening, asking them about their journey, what's worked well for them in their lives, and what's had the biggest impact, what's created the biggest shifts in their lives. So there's a bunch of interviews you'll find. And then I've actually just started a new batch of episodes where now I'm having what I call heart to heart conversations, which feels like a lot of what you and I have done today. So it's heart to heart conversations about really meaning metaphysical topics. And there's that. And then I'm starting to do more solo episodes again. So the episodes that are just coming out will be, those heart to heart conversations, or just kind of like me sharing revelations that I'm having. Yeah,
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much, Beau. This is really, I just love talking about this stuff because it's one of my passions. It's so important. And to see people begin to love their bodies and celebrate food, it's a real joy, right?
Yeah, no, yeah, it's definitely my ultimate jam as well, is, metaphysics and just how it really impacts real life every day. So yeah, also my favorite. It's been so fun to do that with you.
Okay. Well, thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.
Here are the top 10 takeaways from this episode. 1. Pay attention to how you feel during exercising. Let your body tell you when it's done. 2. The more you fight against something, the more it's going to stick around. 3. Can you choose to lean into love when you notice self-criticism about your body or food choices? 4. Stop judging the judgment. It's okay to observe it. 5. Practice soothing yourself by responding to negative thoughts with love and acceptance. 6. You are a conscious creator of your experiences. 7. What are you going to choose to believe as you engage with food or exercise? 8. Your body is actually in service to you. 9. It's okay to have a desire for a different experience with your body's appearance. And 10. Your self-love experience is about loving yourself in the moment. So why not start with this moment right now? You can find all of Beau's links at snipfeed.co/lifeastimothy, including his The Restore Yourself podcast. His website is timothywaterman.carrd.co. All these links, including how to find him on social media, are in the show notes below as well. Remember to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode of the Delicious Alignment Podcast. Till next time, enjoy the yumminess of life.